and I'm excited to share a few of the historical inscriptions we've recorded inside Mitchell Caverns at Providence Mountain State Recreation Area, and how they add to the significance of the Mitchell Caverns Historic District, which we hope to get nominated to the National Register of Historic Places. First, let me give you a little bit of history and context. Providence Mountain State Recreation Area is part of the Inland Empire District. It's located in the eastern Mojave, about 100 miles east of Barstow. The park's crown jewel is Mitchell Caverns. It's a limestone cave with abundant formations, lots of stalactites and stalagmites. If you haven't been, you should absolutely go. These are the ancestral lands of the Chemehuevi, the Mojave, and the Southern Paiute, who all have connections to the caves. But this presentation is going to focus on the period when Jack and Ida Mitchell were stewards of the land between 1929 and 1954. In 1929, Jack Mitchell was looking to change careers, so he purchased a mining claim that included the caves with his then son-in-law, Ted Kleinmeyer. Jack and his wife Ida started a tourism business and began giving tours of the cave in 1930. The caverns were soon featured in several travel publications, which helped them gain popularity. You can see one of those postcards right there. In 1934, Jack and Ida moved to the Providence Mountains full-time, motivated by financial hardship from the Great Depression. They developed the property into a desert oasis. They constructed what's now Essex Road. They built several structures and a small campground, and they offered accommodations and cave tours to visitors during the heyday of Route 66 desert tourism. But that changed during World War II, when U.S. Army General George Patton developed the Desert Training and Maneuver Area in southeastern California and southwestern Arizona. That included two camps, Camp Clipper and Camp Essex. Both camps were constructed south of the Mitchell residence, which effectively cut off their access to Route 66 tourist traffic. But rather than closing, Jack Mitchell pivoted, and he invited the troops to their property in small groups. He offered to train them in desert survival, and he gave them cave tours. The Mitchells also provided housing to the families of some unit leaders, including this man, Captain Turnbull of the 33rd Division, and we'll come back to him in a minute. Camp Clipper was home to the 33rd Division, which includes several specialized subunits, including the 108th Engineers Battalion and the 123rd Field Artillery Regiment. Both Camp Clipper and Camp Essex were home to the 93rd Division, which was a segregated unit of black soldiers. That division also has multiple subunits, including the 369th Infantry. In the interest of simplicity here, I'm just going to reference the division levels, so either the 33rd or the 93rd. But men for both these divisions documented their time in Mitchell Caverns, and both units later deployed to the Pacific Theater. The Mitchell's house was a respite for soldiers who were enduring a brutal training regimen. General Patton thought he could train the soldiers to need less water, so they only gave them a quart of water per day. A lot of the units were there in the summer. The 33rd was there in the summer, so you can imagine how that went. But the rules didn't apply at the Mitchells. So Ida would cook them home-cooked meals and give them endless lemonade. And multiple unit morning reports show the Mitchells' influence on troops, like this one down below from the 93rd, that details a full day spent at the Mitchells, ending by saying, weather fair, roads poor, morale excellent. After the war, the Mitchells returned to providing tours to locals, including soldiers who were permanently stationed in military camps nearby. So in 2024, CFAX interpreter Andy Fitzpatrick noted that a few of the Mitchells' early tourists from the 1930s and World War II soldiers had left their marks inside the cave. Mitchell Caverns is a dry cave now, but it does get some water that will filter in during rainstorms. And it was during one such storm that Andy observed rainwater clearing the dust off the limestone drapery, which revealed a pencil inscription underneath. Andy photographed this inscription down here below, which reads 1943, SDM, which we think is the person's initials, 108th, Company C 108th Engineers, and he later determined that was a unit belonging to the 33rd. He notified us archaeologists at Southern Service Center so we could come out and report it. So in May 2025, Anna McKinney, Dallin, and myself performed a park-wide cave survey as part of the Inland Empire District's cave management plan. We reported 10 inscriptions inside Mitchell Caverns using field notes and digital photography, and we later enhanced those using D-Stretch so we could see what they said. We also documented 2 inscriptions outside the cave, but there's a bunch more out there that still need to be reported, and possibly some red ochre from contact rock art. So upon our return home, I couldn't wait. I had names, I had to jump in the computer and start researching, and I was able to jump on Ancestry.com and the National Archives and start linking people to the inscriptions. So being able to link those people resulted in another trip. And so on Veterans Day, which is fitting, I returned to the cave with Parks Interpreter Andy and Alex Jonassen, who was then, at that time, the Inland Empire District's curator, to see if we could clean the dust off the inscriptions that we had previously reported. So we experimented with pouring and spraying distilled water over top of them to kind of mimic the conditions from when Andy first saw them with the rainwater. We also used natural bristle brushes, so like little artist brushes, to kind of try to move the dust off of the pencil. During this process, we ended up uncovering and reporting 9 new inscriptions, which brought the total documented inside the cave to 19. After cleaning, 13 of 19 inscriptions had improved visibility. Like this list of initials was way longer than we first thought it was. And of those inscriptions whose visibility improved, 8 were not visible at all prior to cleaning, like these inscriptions that are surrounding the initials. 11 of the inscriptions analyzed so far have dates. It includes 1933, 1943, 1945, and one outlier is dated 1868. Pairing dates with the names made it possible for me to go even deeper down the research rabbit hole, and I was able to identify several more individuals, allowing me to introduce you to a few of them. Oh, sorry. So this is Gunnery Sergeant Littlefair. This inscription is dated 1945. It includes several names that are still being researched. At least 3 of the men are identified as gunnery sergeants, including Sergeant Littlefair. He served with the United States Marine Corps in both World Wars, and he was stationed at the Marine Corps Depot of Supplies in Barstow, serving as police sergeant and assistant to security. And George Maranza. This inscription reads G. Maranza, Detroit, 1943. Maranza was drafted and assigned to the 33rd Division, which was stationed at Camp Clipper. He was soon promoted to the position of technician 5th grade, and he worked on switchboards. So in the 1945 publication of Field Artillery magazine, Captain Turnbull, who's from the beginning, his family was staying with the Mitchells, wrote an article about a switchboard test clip created by George Maranza in the field while he was under his command. Both men saw action in Luzon, and Captain Turnbull was awarded the Bronze Star for that campaign. And McCullough. So McCullough wrote his name twice inside the cave, dated 1943, but the name's really common. But the only place that it's popped up for me in research so far is in a mooring report from the segregated 93rd Division in Camp Essex. But this one's still being researched. And no military hub would be complete without Kilroy. The lore goes that the phrase Kilroy was here is attributed to a shipbuilder during World War II who was paid according to how many rivets he installed per day. So to protect his per piece payments, he wrote his name over top of the rivets. The warships weren't painted before they were sent into battle, so his tag was later seen by fellow troops who repeated it around the world. Sometimes it's paired with the cartoon character Ziggy, like an early meme, as seen in the photo on the bottom right. That's hidden in the World War II memorial in Washington, D.C. So while the time frame matches the popularity, the phrasing that's inscribed in the caverns is slightly off, reading Kilroy has been here, which is also the title of a song released by Memphis Slim in 1947. But I have had a lot of crazy research connections during this, but the one that really breaks my brain is that Kilroy might have actually been there. So based on a 1943 morning report from the 33rd Division Signal Corps that lists a soldier named Kilroy receiving a rank promotion. This was about 2 months before they came to Camp Clipper. But research on this one is still in progress too. And a physical connection of the caves to the Mitchell property is their names inside the caves. So Jack, Ida, their 2 daughters, and Jack's then son-in-law, Ted, all wrote their names inside the caverns. To me, this inscription, the presence of Ted, makes this inscription kind of encapsulate the Mitchell's tenure from beginning to end as like stewards of the cultural landscape. So Jack established the first claim on the land with Ted, and they must sign their name inside the cave, which effectively marked the beginning of their tenure there. Ted was also there when Jack died, which in turn ended their time at the Providence Mountains. So our current National Register work puts the Providence Mountains period of significance to the Great Depression and desert tourism. I think the inscriptions add additional evidence to highlight World War II as an important period. It may also open Criterion B as a property that's associated with the lives of historically identifiable individuals whose activities are demonstrably significant, as the Mitchells went above and beyond a simple tourism business by forging a safe space for the men of the 93rd Division, who dealt with the hostile desert environment and overt racism. Finally, the soldiers who fought in the Pacific don't seem to get quite as much recognition as those who fought in Europe, and I think that this adds to their voice. So where do we go from here? I work for state parks, we need funding. The bulk of this analysis has been conducted on a volunteer basis. The inscriptions outside the cave all need to be recorded and researched. We need to document all the caves inside and outside with photogrammetry, so if you know someone, contact me and Paul. Now that the inscriptions have all been exposed, we need to come up with a interpretation and protection plan, and we also need to extend our assessment of the cultural landscape to include the area leading from Camp Clipper and Camp Essex up to the property and up into the mountains above, because they did training marches from the camps to the Mitchells to the mountains and back down. It was like part of their process. So there's a lot of work still to be done. There's a bunch more inscriptions there for you to take a look at. But the larger cultural landscape and the Providence Mountains in general holds a wealth of information that's ready to be reported. So special thanks to my bosses at Southern Service Center for letting me go ham on this project. Everyone in the Inland Empire District who helped with the cave surveys, David Babenkoff and Andrew Sanderson at Project Recover for their guidance on World War II archival research, because I had no idea how to get through the National Archives. And thank you guys for letting me share.